Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of Film Bouillabaisse. It's been a little bit since we've had another episode, but I'm here as always with my amazing co-host Logan Albright.
Hello!
And Logan, it's been so long since we both saw the same movie that we had something to say about it.
That's true. You have stopped going to movie theaters almost altogether, so it's made it difficult.
Well, recently I've started going back, but we don't need to talk about that film. We're instead going to talk about...
Malignant.
Yeah, I always want to make the G silent because of Italian.
Malignant.
Yeah. All right, so this movie was contemporaneously released in the cinemas and on HBO Max. I saw it on HBO Max. Logan...
I went to the cinema to see it because I always go to the cinema.
Logan went to the cinema, but I saw it for free at home. So, who's really the winner here?
I saw it for free too. I have Regal Unlimited, so it doesn't cost me anything.
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't sure they were still doing that anymore.
Yep.
Well, tell me what you thought.
Well, I'll start by saying it was not the worst horror film I've seen this year by a wide margin. So that's mark in its favor. That's positive.
So, I liked the first 25 minutes, 30 minutes, because it uses the camera in these really inventive ways. Not in ways that the filmmaker thinks are inventive, and I think you know what I mean by that. Lots of overhead shots showing a lot of the interiority of this house that I think used to be a church. There's a lot of stained glass. The way that it cycles through the house is really neat. It cultivates a sense of dread. You feel like there's a lot of hovering shots over a character that's lying down. Did you notice the camera work, Logan?
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking while watching this is how, these kind of big budget studio films now, they've conquered all of the technical difficulties of making films. They're technically very adept. They're good with cameras, they're good with lighting, they're good with sound, although I have some other things to say about the sound later. And where they really fall short is in the kind of storytelling creativity aspect of the films. I feel like we've lost a lot of that, but in terms of technical ability to create a film that looks and sounds good, they've got all that down. They definitely know what they're doing.
I loved that the house had stained glass windows in the stairwell, in this big, beautiful stairway, and they were able to use lighting to their advantage because they can just pump out the big industrial lights outside of that stained glass window, and because it filters the light, it looks more natural, like it's actually moonlight coming in, and they were able to shoot several of the nighttime scenes like that without having to use fake light.
Before we get too heavy into the details of the filmmaking, do you want to give people a synopsis of what the film is about or the premise so that they know what we're talking about?
I'm always getting ahead of myself. Malignant is the story of this young woman who lives in a haunted house, or does she? Spooky things, incredibly spooky things start happening to her, and she's trying to figure out why, and people around her are experiencing it as well, but in a different way.
Well, you say spooky things, but that's sort of an understatement. It's a series of gruesome murders.
Yeah. I'm trying not to give anything away.
I don't know if I would use the word spooky to describe a home invasion and a graphic murder of your significant other.
So the film does start out with a supernatural home invasion, and it is pretty steady. It's got some good dread. In the first full act, maybe the first 30 minutes. And then the film completely goes off of the rails. Then once you hit the third act, you're like, okay, it's all going to tie together. Then the film that's already off the rails goes off of those rails. It's like off Broadway, except not good.
See, I think I enjoyed it more when it went further and further off the rails because it kind of leaned into the absurdity of the story a little bit more. I felt like in the beginning it was trying to take itself a little too seriously given how silly the story was. And so, I thought I actually enjoyed it more when it got more and more ridiculous as the plot went on.
So you're saying the film was so bad that it was bad and then it came back around to being good again? That's how bad it was?
I don't know if I'd say that it was that bad. It was just, it's a silly premise, which I don't want to give too much away because there's spoilers to reveal the premise, but it's a really silly idea for a film. And if you're going to do that, you kind of have to just embrace it and lean into it. And I felt like this movie would have been more successful if they'd kind of leaned into the camp a little bit more because it walks up to the line and it looks over it. The very initial the initial dialogue in that very first scene is so bad, and like they're so on the nose with the exposition. And then like a lot of the stuff with the main character's sister is kind of winking at the camera a little bit, and she has some comedic lines. And there was like this quirky forensic investigator who's like lonely and kind of desperate and nerdy, and like there's lot of little quirkiness that they could have played up a little bit more to kind of acknowledge and wink at the audience of what, like, we know that this is absurd. And they didn't really do that. They almost did. And I think it would have been more successful and more fun if they had done that, because there's certain things in the film that you just can't take seriously. And so if you know the filmmakers aren't taking it seriously as well, I think you'd have more fun.
Things I couldn't take seriously: the main actor's wig. It was so obviously a wig that it spoiled a plot point. It's not a big plot point, but it spoiled something for me. So I have a friend who's also a horror hound, and he watched this movie, I think today, and he is a very even-keeled guy, just real mellow, and he said that whoever made this film should be shot. And he was also very disappointed with it. He was able to watch the last part for comedic value, but a very polarizing film.
Right. It is a polarizing film, and like I said, you know, it kind of walks that line between camp and taking itself too seriously, which I don't think really worked. And I kind of I didn't see everything coming, but I saw a good portion of the twist coming, and so I wasn't that surprised. I also didn't find it scary. I don't know if you found it scary at all, but there was nothing in the movie that scared me. It comes from that school of filmmaking where they think that loud noises are the scariest thing. And they're like, let's make it loud and people will be afraid. And that's not the scariest thing, guys. For all the aspiring filmmakers out there, if you want to make a horror movie, loud noises aren't frightening.
Well, you may have seen the trailer or the promo for the film, the mini trailer, and that is the best part. I mean, what you're seeing there, that is intense. It does cultivate dread. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It might make your partner whimper. It is pretty intense. I thought that was well shot, but I mean, the rest of the film is not at that quality. So don't go into it thinking that that's what the entire film is like, or that that's like the denouement or the climax of the film. No, like that's just the opening.
I wish there had been more of that cultivating dread and build up, because like I was thinking about my favorite horror movies and the classics, and how they, like things like The Exorcist or The Omen or The Shining, like how they take like 45 minutes to an hour before anything really scary happens, and they just kind of really build it up very, very slowly. And like this film, you have screaming and blood in the first like 30 seconds of the film. And so like I wish they had kind of taken more time to build up the tension, and then before the crazy release at the end.
Right. The main character's sister is a lovely person, but I could describe her personality as younger sister.
But she's an actress, and she went to be a princess at some kind of a theme park thing, which was awesome. I liked her. She was my favorite part of the movie because she was like kind of slightly comedic. There was a weird flirty thing between her and the detective that was never really explored. And I kind of liked the hints of things that we got from her character, because yeah, the thing about her in the princess costume we never saw again. The thing with her and the detective wasn't really explored. I like the subtlety of her character.
Okay, well, I enjoyed it enough. I'm not ashamed. I'm not displeased that I watched it. I will probably never watch it again, except maybe to watch that opening, because that was shot so neat. You know, I thought it was going to be like Melancholia again, where I just endlessly watch like the first 8 minutes of the film, but no.
Yeah, I wouldn't see it again either, but it was kind of a fun movie. It's not one of the best horror movies of the year. It's also not the worst horror movie of the year. Worth seeing.
Okay. All right. Well, that's our very milquetoast review of Malignant.
Can we talk about a couple spoiler things at the end of this? Like, let everybody know if you want to see it, turn it off now. But I have a couple of spoiler things that I want to talk about, if that's okay.
Spoilers. Doodly-doo, 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 doodly-doo. Cut.
Okay. So the conceit of the film that she's got a conjoined twin in her brain is ridiculous, but it's not outside the Overton window of ridiculousness for horror movies. But what I thought they pushed too far was like, why is the conjoined twin a martial arts hand-to-hand combat expert that can take on an entire police department with no weapons and beat them all? Like that's pushing my suspension of disbelief too far. And then the other thing is like, what was with the being able to transmit the thoughts over the radio? Where does that come from? That seemed kind of ridiculous as well. Like, these are things I think they could have either gone one way or the other. They could have gone more realistic and like made it a better film, or they could have just like acknowledged that this doesn't make sense and pointed it out to the audience, and then we would have like said, oh, this is a funny, silly, campy film. We can have fun with it in that regard. But like they didn't pick a side, and so it made it harder for me to enjoy that part of it because I was like, this doesn't make any sense. This is ridiculous.
Everything points to it being a supernatural origin is the cause of all of this menace, but it's not. It's a completely scientifically backed explanation. So it doesn't make any sense how somebody that's not had a body knows how to use a body backwards exquisitely. Something that Joe and I wrestled with was at the beginning, like we saw the trailer for this again after we saw it and we're like, oh, that's right. Like she's running from this black fog ghost creature. Like she sees it. So that doesn't make sense if it's, Professor Quirrell in the back of her head. Did it make you think of Professor Quirrell from Harry Potter?
Yes, exactly. Interestingly, the trailer also was like, the trailer played up the imaginary friend angle a lot. And like, you didn't get into that until like an hour into the movie, which I kept waiting for that to happen. And it took so long to get there. It was very strange.
I've seen so many movies that do that dark side of drop dead Fred kind of trope. And I just, if it had gone that way, I was going to just be really not impressed. I figured out the twist, I think, way before the filmmaker thought that I would. But it still wasn't like what I wanted.
Yeah, I figured out most of it as well. So it wasn't that surprising.
Well, the opening scene kind of spoils it for you because you can see the remnant of the twin when they're doing the surgery on I think she's like 11-year-old girl or something. So you can see it happening. And so that's in your mind when you're trying to figure it out. So it wasn't much of a twist. But it really did make me want to go do that tour in Seattle, like the Underground Seattle tour. That looked amazing.
The Underground Seattle tour looked like a lot of fun, yeah.
All right, so milk toast, thumbs sideways.
Thumbs sideways. I'm hoping there will be other better horror releases before Halloween, but we'll see.
We'll see. All right, well, you've heard it first, or, 200th, here on Film Bouillabaisse. Keep it real.